Boom! It's Graceful Thunder, and today I'm here with SirKewberth. Thank you for joining me.
Hello.
So we're gonna just be doing a little interview. I have some questions. I went around to some different friends and asked them for some input, so these are kind of based somewhat on ideas that they gave. So, I don't know, we'll see how this goes.
Fire away.
Alright, so first question is not very related at all, but it's, what's your favorite animal?
My favorite animal? Oh boy, that's a tough one. I'm not sure if I have a favorite animal. I mean, I like dogs and cats for different reasons. Favorite animal? Boy, I have no good answer to that. I don't have a favorite animal. Maybe a shark. I like sharks. I dive, so I like to dive with sharks.
Oh, is that where the shark head came from?
No, not necessarily. That was just, was thinking about doing some kind of, underwater monster stuff.
Oh, so let's see. What were some of the games that you played as a kid that might have influenced Cubic Castles?
Boy, I don't know if they would have influenced Cubic Castles. When I was playing when I was younger, oh boy. I mean, I grew up playing things like Civilization and Prince of Persia, a lot of Nintendo games. I guess you could say those had definitely an influence on Cubic Castles in terms of the style. It's a little bit Nintendo-ish in many ways with the bumpers and those sorts of things. But a lot of that stylistic stuff actually came from Betamax, who designed a lot of the early graphics in that. But I definitely like to play the early Nintendo 64, the first 3D Mario. That was a big one for me, and I've continued to play those games on like the Wii and the later units that they released. So I like a lot of that Nintendo stuff.
That's neat. I don't know as much about those games, but I hear that they were really good.
Yeah, they were fantastic. I mean, at the time when the first 3D Mario game came out, it was just revolutionary.
So one thing that multiple people that I talked to wanted to know was, why did you make Cubic Castles, and why do you continue to develop it?
Well, I've been making games for a long time, and the idea to work on this particular game actually didn't come from me. It came from Cosmic, who does the server, and Betamax. I was just we all kind of knew each other from doing our own independent games, and I've been doing games for a long time, and I just finished a project, and they were planning to start working on this game, and they asked me to join because we all had sort of different things we were good at that we could sort of bring into the game. And in my case, I was brought in to do some of the, maybe say some of the more technical work, like porting the game to Android and doing some of the physics for the collision and the pathfinding. Like if you click on a block and the QB has to find a way to get to the other block to mine it or whatever. Just technical things. So, we all brought sort of our own strengths. Betamax was really good with the artwork and the, setting up the style for the game, and Cosmic was good at some of the business side, and he was going to do the server end. So we just sort of decided that since the game was too big for just one person, we felt it needed more people, that we would team up together and work on this one. But the initial idea to work on this sort of game is actually from them. I know that Betamax had played a lot of Minecraft before, and he always had an interest in doing something along those lines. So that was part of it.
That's really neat, actually.
And to answer the second part, why do we keep working on it? Well, it's a little bit unusual. I mean, in the sense that all the other games that I ever did before were kind of one and done. Like we would make the game, and when it was finished, we would release it, and then we would move on. And so if you make like a single player game, like I made some of those sort of matching games and some puzzle games, and most of the things like adventure games. They didn't really have any life beyond the first iteration of the game. I mean, you could always do. I mean, we did for one of my early puzzle games. I released a bunch of now people call it DLC, but we called it level packs. And they were just additional puzzles for the game. So we did a little additional work in that way, and you can produce sequels. But this kind of game is really different in the sense that you could. I mean, as long as the audience is there, you could technically keep working on it forever.
Yeah, people are always interested in the new things that are out.
And there's no end of work to do in Cubic Castles. It's just, I mean, all I see when I look at it is a long list of things to improve and change. And that's not a bad thing. I mean, in a way, it's a good thing. I mean, a lot of players, they get sort of tired about waiting about things that I mentioned. I would like to work on this a few years ago. I see in the forums, Cuberth mentioned he'd work on that 3 years ago. Just give him some time, like making fun of me. But the fact of the matter is there's this huge list of possible things to work on. And what we end up having to do is sort of pick just a few. And not because we don't want to put additions in and all those things. It's because, we just don't have the time. So we have to pick certain things and try and decide what's the most important thing to work on. If I could, I would give the players everything they wanted, because that would benefit me. I mean, obviously the players would be more happy. We would have more players, but that's just not possible. I mean, we're a small company. There's not that many people working on the game, and there's a limit to how much we can actually do.
Yeah. So I guess another thing that people kept wanting to know was they wanted to know what happened to Betamax.
Betamax, nothing really. I mean, I still talk to him every day, and he just... Well, like I said, this is sort of an unusual game for all of us to work on, in the sense that usually we would work on a game for 6 months, maybe up to a year, and then move on to the next game. And there's a certain amount of fun in that, because you get to work on a new project. And when you're working on a game like Cubic, you're working on the same game for year after year after year. So I know that Betamax had a bunch of things that he wanted to work on, and so I think he just decided that he wanted to go back and work on some of his own games and not always be on the same project. There's an attraction to wanting to move on to another game, even though like in Cubic you could technically, like for instance, we added the farming I think it was last summer, and that's like building a whole new game in the game. So it's kind of like taking on a new project, but it's not really the same thing as like if I were to stop working on Cubic and then go make a first-person shooter or a battle royale game or a role-playing game. I mean, it would be a completely new project, and that's kind of fun to do that, So I think he just wanted to move on and work on some other things. But we're still friends, and we talk every day, and he still helps me with things. And sometimes if we need to, we can go to him and have him do some work for us. So it's not like he's gone completely, but basically he just wanted to work on some of his own games.
Nice. Yeah, I can see kind of why he would want to go and work on some other ones. Let's see. So, what do you think might be the craziest or weirdest experience that you've had with the community in the game?
Oh boy. Well, everything about working on a game like this was kind of surprising, because I didn't really know what I was getting into. I'd never done an MMO style game, and I've never really had the same kind of interaction with players that I do with Cubic. In all of the other cases with the single player games, I almost didn't talk to the players at all. It's kind of a new phenomenon where like the developers are really active with the player community. even like in single player games. But in the older days, we just put the game out, and then if people bought it and liked it, great. And every now and then, maybe we'll get an email or something saying I like this game or I like that level. But for the most part, we were just sort of working on our own, and the people would play, and we didn't really have a lot of interaction. So it's constantly surprising. For instance, the incredible builds that people make and the games they invent, and it's really hard to pick just like one thing. But I mean, it's really been quite eye-opening. I guess a lot of the stuff that was really surprising is things that I can't really talk about in public, because there's a lot of drama that goes on between the players in the background.
Oh my goodness.
People steal things from other people, and then they report players, and then make things up, and there's all kinds of stuff that goes on. And it's you can't really talk about it because you'd be betraying the player's privacy. And I've even thought sometimes about maybe we should add an addendum to the user guidelines saying that in certain cases we're allowed to tell people what's going on, because you get these cases where someone gets banned from the game, let's say, and they did something really terrible, and we can't really talk about it. But when they get kicked out of the game, what they do is they go to all their friends and they say, well, I took this hat on the ground and it wasn't, my hat, and then they said that I stole the hat, so they kicked me out. But meanwhile, the truth is something completely different.
Mm-hmm.
And so then you get all these players that are messaging you saying, well, why did you kick this guy out? This is completely unfair, because they don't really know the full story. They only know what their friend told them.
Yeah.
So you're constantly dealing with all these sorts of things, and all of that is very surprising because we didn't expect to have to deal with any of it. And then you have also, unfortunately, a lot of the surprising stuff happens to be kind of bad stuff. But then you have people that made like completely fake websites that they promise people they're going to be moderators, and then all you got to do is put your password here, and then you get 10,000 qubits, and you got to chase these sites down, and people get scammed by these things all the time, and it's a lot to deal with. But it is all surprising, like the level of sophistication that people use. And our game is not that big, in terms of the audience, so I can't imagine what these people like, Fortnite, millions of players or whatever, what they have to deal with. It'd be incredible.
Mm-hmm. So, are there any people who used to play the game that you miss talking to?
Oh yeah, we've had a lot of like really good players that came in that I sort of wish they were still around. And sometimes they do come back. There's a lot of times that people go for even up to a year, and then they end up coming back and they play for a while. I mean, BJ Dware was a really good player. He was a nice guy to talk to. You had Dreadful Knop, who was really, really creative and did these incredible builds and used to do all these great community events and stuff. And it's always sad to see like good players like that who stop being active. But realistically, any game that you're going to play, we can't really produce enough new content for the game that's going to keep people interested, month after month after month after year. I mean, even though there are people who've been playing for several years, I think a lot of that is social. It's because they meet friends, and they have friends in the game, and they sort of create their own games in the game. And in terms of us providing content, there's really kind of a limit to how fast we can go. And so it's not really that unusual if people decide to leave the game after a few months and then they come back later. It's expected, What a game like this needs, though, is it needs an influx of new people. So there has to be enough new people coming in to keep up with the number of people that eventually will go. But I don't think that it's a negative view of the game that players sometimes leave. I think it's normal. I think for me, if I look at whatever I happen to be playing, let's say I played Skyrim for a while, or any game really, Don't Starve was one I really liked, and I played that a lot. But after a few months, you sort of get tired of the same game and you want to move on, you want to do something new. It's normal.
Yeah. That's true. So, what do you think might be some of your favorite blocks?
Favorite blocks? Oh, I really like the scaffolding block just because they're kind of a little bit outside of the box for building, like the drop scaffolds and the scaffolds. I think that's sort of an unusual thing that I came up with for the game, and kind of like how they worked out. Aside from that, it's hard to think something else offhand. I don't know what to say.
I still remember that system message that was around for a while that says, "Do you know how to use drop scaffolding?"
Yeah, right. Because they're kind of unusual, right? And it all came about because if you're on the bottom and you want to build up, it's very easy. But if you're up and you want to build down, it's actually quite hard. And so that's where this drop scaffold idea came from. And it's really that's kind of a thing that it's not obvious.
Yeah, I guess so. So what do you think some of your favorite items might be, like wearables and stuff?
Well, I obviously like the wizard hats because I'm wearing one. I love the diving helmet. It's great, I like some of the Halloween stuff. The werewolf mask. Yeah, I like... what else would I think of? The wings are pretty cool. I like the way that they flap differently based on the kind of wing you have. Those are some of my favorites.
I like the animation when you're pulling a block and the wings go back.
Yeah, it's nice. That's all credit to Betamax.
So, what is one of the most creative building block combinations you've seen? Like, where somebody might take blocks that might not be meant to be used a certain way, but they work really well used that way.
It's really hard to answer that because I'm certain that I've seen a ton of really creative builds and really creative uses of blocks, and I've visited a lot of the realms over the years. But now to just remember one off the top of my head, that's difficult. I mean, the only thing that really comes to mind off the top of my head, and this is by no means the only combination I've seen that surprised me, but obviously I was quite impressed with the Mona Lisa that was done using just all the different colors of blocks that when you look at it from far away, it makes the painting. Have you seen that?
I don't know if I've seen that one.
Yeah, there's the Mona Lisa in the game, and it looks really good. It's a pixel art kind of thing that uses the different shades of the blocks to recreate the painting. It's quite amazing.
I'll have to go and look at it sometime.
Yeah, I think you might be able to find it if you look for Knop Museum. I think it was made by a player called Beaveristic.
Okay, that does sound cool.
Yeah, another thing that Knop did, one of his very early realms, was he placed blocks in a way down the realm that if you tilted the camera at a certain angle and you looked down at the blocks, they would line up to make a word. I think the word was love. It was puzzle. So you go in and from any random camera angle, it didn't look like anything special. But if you went to the right spot in the realm and you turned the camera and you tilted it at the right angle, you'd see the word. That was very clever.
That sounds neat as well. So, of the things that you've added to the game in the past few months, which would you say has been the most difficult?
Well, I'm working on this new overworld thing, and it's very, very difficult because it's such a big change to the game, and it's a scary one too because when you make a big change, obviously not everyone make it. But sometimes you just have to take a chance if you want to improve things. Because if you just stick with what's already there, then you can't really improve it. So I'm still working on that. Obviously, it's not out yet. It's kind of playable now on the beta server, and plan to bring some players in to help test it at some point soon. but very difficult change. The farming was quite hard to do, and the switches were very difficult to implement. A lot of the reason that some of these things are difficult to add is because, and what makes it such a big job instead of something quick. First off, the game is multiplayer and online, so that alone makes everything much, much more difficult than if you're just making a single-player game. If you have a single-player game, a switch is very easy. But if you want to add a switch where anyone can go touch the switch and it has to be synced with all the players, then it starts to get very difficult. But the second reason that it's hard, and what made the switches particularly difficult, was that you're not building, like when we created Cubic Castles, it had certain things that it was designed to do. And it wasn't designed to do farming and switches and some of these other things. So when you go and you implement something new, unless you're rewriting big parts of the code to make it more well designed to integrate that new feature, you sort of have to take what's there already and deal with all these little technical problems to make it work. And so yeah, it's just the fact that Cubic Castles is constantly evolving makes it difficult to add things. And at some point you got to say, this has gone so far now that we have to actually go back and rewrite this whole section of the code so that we can keep adding. Because it's getting too messy, it's getting too difficult to deal with, and it's getting too slow. But that's always a difficult decision to make as well, because then what you're doing is you're putting in a lot of work in the hopes that in the future it'll pay off, but the players don't see that. For them, the game, in the best case scenario, it remains the same. In the worst case scenario, you break something when you're doing all that changing. And so for instance, the QB, okay? The QB has outfits and has certain animations and things. Now it would be nice to have we could add like vines to the game on the walls and then have the QB climb the vines, or we could add some like really sort of thin platforms and have the QB do kind of a tight rope walk across. So you could add all these sort of like different motion things, and but to do that, then what you have to do is you have to add new animations, and then you have all the old animations and the way that they were done, and then it's not easy to add new animations without redoing the old ones. So it becomes like really, really complicated.
Yeah, sounds like it. So I guess that's why QBs don't lay down in bed?
Exactly, yeah. It would, right now at this point, to really make big changes to what the QBs can do would probably require rewriting the QB code, which, it's on the list, but the list is very, very, very long.
Yeah. So another one that somebody wanted to know was, why don't censored words make any noise anymore?
Well, you'd probably be surprised at how many things are broken in the game that we don't even know about. One of the problems is that we're working on the game and we don't have time to really play it that much. So if something gets broken, unless people are reporting it, there's no way for us to know it's even broken. So I didn't even know that was broken until you just mentioned it now. So that's a bug. That's basically what it comes down to. The sound should still be there. I think what probably happened is we have like some software that takes all the assets for the game and it sort of bundles them together in certain directories and stuff for the game to use. And when we added we changed the file type of the sounds at one point. So we could make the download of the game smaller, so it'd be easier for people to download it. And we also added some music to the game with the speakers. So if we had kept everything in the old format and we added the music, it would have been the download just getting quite large, especially for mobile. So the old tools that we used to package those assets up don't work so well with the new file type. And so I think what probably happened is some sounds, the ones for those words, are missing probably from the package. That's probably what happened.
Oh, okay. I wondered if it might be just something to discourage people from using those words. That makes sense.
Well, not. Yeah, I mean, given that they're already sort of censored and they kind of have the funny stuff and all that. I mean, it doesn't. I don't think it so much matters if the people use those words like in that sense, because it just makes it sort of a cartoony effect out of it. So we weren't really trying to discourage that. I think it's just a bug that the sounds went away.
Yeah. Okay. So I guess I've just got one more. Do you have any surprises planned for the near future that you would be willing to talk about?
Well, I'll say this much. Every time that we put out new builds, people are combing through our files, right? And they look for new blocks and things like that. And there's some pretty big stuff that's in those files that people haven't found yet. And I think my just saying that is going to send the detectives off, and you're probably going to see things pop up in the forums. So yeah, there's a few surprises to be found in the game files if people want to look for them. Things that we're working on.
I feel like my brother might start searching right away.
Yeah, it'll be in the files that they don't really look in, but they're there.
I see. So I guess that's all of the questions that I had. Was there anything else that you wanted to say or talk about?
Not off the top of my head. I don't really have anything that I wanted to reveal other than to say that the new overworld stuff is coming, and it's been a big project. Hopefully it'll be worth it. I think that after that's done, my plan is to try and do a lot of smaller little fixes and incremental improvements to the game and try to update more often. So hopefully after that changes out, we can sort of get into... I know that there's a lot of things like small bugs in the game that need to be addressed, and old features like the friends list and player versus player and the clan stuff. There's a lot of elements of the game. The farming is another one. There's a lot of elements of the game that can use little incremental improvements. Elements with the UI. There's some problems on Android. There's a lot of little things to fix. So I want to spend a lot of time just kind of like fixing little things and adding incremental improvements to the game and doing some sort of quicker updates. So that's the plan for after the overworld update.
Okay, well, I hope that goes well. Thank you for coming here and joining me.
Okay, you're welcome. It was interesting. I couldn't answer all the questions with really interesting answers, but some of them a little difficult because like creative builds and stuff. I've seen so many, but I don't remember them off the top of my head.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thanks for having me, and I guess that's it.
I'll go ahead and close off the video then. So I guess that's all I have for today. Thank you for watching, and I hope you come back again.
Yeah, thanks. Bye-bye.